Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update, the second part thereof for the, 30th of December 2024, although I have done a breaking news update concerning what I'm going to talk about at the beginning. I won't put too much effort and detail into this. Go and watch my breaking news update concerning the massive aid package and financial assistance package going to Ukraine from the US. So we heard hints about this last night. Zelensky said something that was going to be coming today. And we heard, first of all, that $15 billion of US aid underwritten by frozen Russian assets, profits, future revenues from those assets would be given to Ukraine. So they're going to receive that. And I presume that is imminent. That's why it's been announced. And it's not something that's been announced and will be drip fed over the next 6 months. I'm guessing they want to get this to Ukraine before Trump becomes president proper. And likewise with US military aid, you've got a $2.5 billion package. It's a huge package involving $1.25 billion in PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority. So that is stuff coming from US stocks, and then $1.22 billion from the USAI package, which has now been exhausted. That is orders to American industry usually, or American orders for weaponry, and there isn't too much detail from the statement from Joe Biden. What he does say is that will provide Ukraine with both an immediate influx of capabilities, in other words PDA, that it continues to use to great effect on the battlefield, and longer term supplies of air defense, artillery, and other critical weapons systems. So the orders might well, and we can start splitting hairs here, but I guess all of this is air defense, artillery, and weapons systems, not the ammunition. In other words, those orders could be for things like Patriot systems, artillery pieces. They could be for HIMARS. They could be for M777 orders. They could be for I don't know that they would order new M777s though, but yeah, I wonder what they will be using that $1.22 billion worth of USAI for, in order to get new equipment in from manufacturers. I don't know that there's... I mean, this was another interesting statement, including drawdown of older US equipment for Ukraine, rapidly delivering it to the battlefield, so it's your PDA, and then revitalizing the US defense industrial base to modernize and replenish our stockpiles with new weapons. So that's this idea that actually the money is essentially being used to upgrade American defense capabilities. Okay, so that's excellent. I mean, goodness me, we could talk about that for a long time. $2.5 billion and $15 billion going to Ukraine in terms of military equipment and financial aid. Absolutely brilliant, and exactly what they need right now. The big challenge for the Ukrainians is, of course, boots on the ground. So they need people to be able to operate that equipment. And without those people coming from Ukraine, can they do a better job of mobilizing? Almost certainly. Can they get foreign assistance into Ukraine? Well, that's yet to be seen. It could be a case of getting Western peacekeepers in and then into the west of Ukraine and shifting Ukrainians to the front line. But I think the only chance you're going to see of seeing Western soldiers in Ukraine is if there's a ceasefire. And so therefore, your boots on the ground issue is kind of moot. You're not going to be fighting, so you don't need those boots on the ground, really. I don't know that it's realistic to expect anything different from that. Okay, the Russian Voronkas are reacting. This is the 13th, the Mill blogger saying, well, what's up, guys? A truce? Keep your pockets wide open. In other words, you're not going to be expecting a truce that soon, because the Americans have provided the Ukrainians with $2.5 billion in military aid and $15 billion in financial aid, in the process of transferring hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds and missiles as well to Kyiv. So, now, on top of this, it's been a good couple of days for Ukraine in this domain. So Ukraine's defense minister, Rustem Umerov, says 3 European partners have provided 150 million euros more in military aid for the country. So he's thanked Denmark, France and Lithuania for the new assistance. Statement translated on where the money will go was posted on Telegram. So Umerov said Ukraine received over 150 million euros to finance the Ukrainian defense industry. So this isn't equipment coming from these nations, but 150 million euros from those nations for the Ukrainian defense industry. And I think I talked about this in my breaking news update, but if there's a $10 billion shortfall in funding for the Ukrainian defense industry, they've said, look, we've got the capacity. We could be producing loads of stuff. We know how to. We've got the facilities in place. We've actually got the people that should be able to do that. What we are missing is about $10 billion worth of funding. If they're suddenly getting $15 billion, and if that comes as a kind of like big, wad of cash from the frozen Russian assets, then suddenly Ukraine is going to be able to match its capacity, its potential to reality. And you might start seeing an absolute ton of equipment being produced by Ukraine to meet their needs on the battlefield, on the front line, but also in terms of distance munitions, of missiles and rockets and drones, long distance, short distance, artillery. It might be a situation where Ukraine is able to hit Russia without losing its own troops because you're doing it from a distance. And then getting another 150 million euros from these three countries, Denmark, France and Lithuania, really, really helps. 111 million euros for the implementation of agreements within the framework of cooperation between the Ministry of Defence of Ukraine, the Ministry of Strategic Industry and the Ministry of Defence of Denmark to strengthen the armed forces of Ukraine with the latest domestically produced means of destruction. Okay, that's a pretty wide remit there. 29 million euros as a grant from the French government to strengthen the security and defense of Ukraine. Sounds pretty similar. 10 million euros for the development of the Ukrainian defense industry in accordance with the memorandum between the Ministry of National Defense of Lithuania and the MOD Ukraine and the Ministry of Strategic Industry. In other words, 111 million from Denmark, 29 from France, 10 from Lithuania. And that makes up that 150 million euros. The funds will be used in particular for the production of missiles, deep strike drones and artillery installations. Exactly what I was talking about. Artillery installations is likely going to be Bogdana self-propelled guns, but I wonder whether they're going to be producing I don't know if they've got any aims to do like a HIMARS similar thing, or something like a Neptune rocket, a Neptune missile firing installation. So they're producing all of these, supposedly at scale, all of these long-range weapons like the Peklo, that means hell, missile drone, like the Trembita, like the Neptune R360, but how, particularly with the missiles, how are they able to fire them? It's slightly easier for the drones because they're generally catapulted into the sky, and so that's quite an easy setup. But for missiles, do they have to build those as well? I thank the partners for their important support and contribution to strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities. This is really super important. So this is good news for Ukrainians. They're ramping up that production capacity, or will be shortly, I'm sure. Latvia have continued to provide support to Ukraine as well. Another shipment of more than 1,000 combat drones for various applications has been prepared. Latvia leads the drone coalition together with the UK and will also allocate 20 million euros for drone purchases in 2025. And I presume that is drone purchases from Latvia for Ukraine. And that's where, you are doing economic stimulus in your own country. So, Ukraine need loads of help. We're going to provide them with 20 million euros worth of drones, and we're going to build all 20 million euros worth in Latvia. In other words, we are just economically stimulating. We are employing people to the tune of 20 million euros, and whatever they're doing, the output of that labor just goes to Ukraine. But that's not so important for this, which is the stimulus into the economy, that these workers will then have money in their pocket to go and spend out over there, and that company will have a supply chain that works through there, and that's just 20 million euros going into the Latvian economy, and that's obviously a benefit there. So now the Polish tractor plant acquired by Ukraine will produce armored vehicles. I didn't know about this, but the Ursus tractor plant in Poland, which went bankrupt earlier this year, will not close, but will begin a new chapter, the production of military equipment. So I presume a Ukrainian outfit has taken control of that. Now there's been talk about Volkswagen in Germany being in all sorts of trouble and having to shut lots of factories. I think there's already been talk about Rheinmetall taking over one of them. Is that right? But this could be a period of resurgence in the defense military industrial complex around Europe. The issue for that is investment for the long term. If the US is forcing a negotiation on Russia and Ukraine, will this war end very soon? And if you're starting up a new factory with the intention of building stuff particularly in like a year, 2 years time, then actually is that going to be a wasted investment if the war comes to a close? But then you've got Taiwan, then you've got what goes on. What's Europe looking like in terms of needing to tool up its own armed forces, given the threat that Russia now provides on a more long-term basis, and then China, and then etc. So interesting that Ukraine has done that. Now, German aid to Ukraine says as Brave 1 is announced. So this is a drone project. A German-developed interceptor drone produced by Titan Technologies was recently tested by Ukrainian drone operators. Representatives of the Ukrainian security and defense forces were also present during the tests and highly appreciated its capabilities. The interceptor drone reaches speeds of up to 300 kilometers an hour and has an effective range of up to 20 kilometers. It's now planned to match a manufacturer with Ukrainian developers of complementary solutions so that both sides can learn from each other and improve their products. And this is what I talk about all the time. The getting involved in support Ukraine is about improving your own defense capabilities and swapping best practices and understanding the needs on the battlefield. UK and Latvia being at the head of the drone coalition capability coalition for drones is partly about supporting Ukraine, but actually probably mainly about providing the UK and Latvia and all the other countries in that drone capability coalition with the know-how and expertise to produce drones that are fit for the modern battlefield, so that those member allies are going to be much better prepared going forward in the event of a war. So the UK, for example, has the best drones in the world to do X, Y, and Z, and we know that because they've been used in Ukraine. We've helped them to do that. We've developed them with the Ukrainians, and we're working in a coalition with them and others to produce the very best pieces of equipment for the modern battlefield, and then we can use them against the Houthis. We can use them in this context, we can use them in that context, or whatever. And we are in a better position as a nation from supporting Ukraine. Ground drones. Here, Sarin points out in this video, or this video shows the variety of ground drones and how we've got some significantly, I guess, large drones here. We have seen the UGVs, unmanned ground drones, previously, the ones that kind of drop mines. They're maybe the size of my desk here. Here we've got considerably larger drones being manufactured to do goodness knows what. I presume these are going to have, at the moment, they've got like reconnaissance on board, but you can imagine them with man-pads, ATGM, so that's man-portable air defense systems to shoot down planes and helicopters. They could have anti-tank guided missiles on board. They could have heavy machine guns, all sorts of stuff. And both sides are really working hard to evolve their ground drone capabilities. Here we have a Humvee in Ukraine, so a Ukrainian Humvee being done up with quite a substantial cope cage. I talked about this the other day with a Russian one saying, don't necessarily laugh at these. This is the need that they have on the battlefield. The drones are such a problem that you much rather you make a drone explode out here than on your windscreen, right? And so, you are going to have vehicles driving around like this nowadays. As I said before, we laughed at the cope cages at the beginning of the war because they were designed to they're supposed to be designed to stop those little kind of boxes on top of a tank were to stop stop rocket launchers, essentially, these RPG-7s or whatever, old school rocket launchers, but they had them on top to, in a vain attempt to stop ATGMs like your Javelins and your in-laws with your top-down munitions that the coke cages were just absolutely ill-equipped to deal with, and that's why we laughed at them. We're like, you got that, and then you see this blown-up tank, right? But now the kind of coke cage, if you like, has evolved to be pretty useful. It might look ridiculous. You might look like it might look like it's something you want to laugh at, but actually, this is how you deal with drones. I'd much rather drive in a Humvee with this on it than a Humvee without that on it in a battlefield situation. Okay. And then finally, German peacekeeping role in Ukraine hinges on Russia's consent, according to Merz. And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, which is you're not going to see, I think, Western boots on the ground unless there's a proper kind of ceasefire and peacekeeping mission. And in fact, Friedrich Merz, the leader of the CDU, probably going to be the next chancellor, says that Germany may consider joining a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine, but only with Russia's consent. In other words, Russia's going to be agreeing to a peacekeeping mission because they've agreed to a ceasefire and some kind of formalized freezing of the lines. Then those troops will come in. I don't think you're going to see troops coming in while there's still an active war going on to free up the Ukrainians in the west to then come further east and be applied to the front line. I just don't think you're going to see that, and I think Friedrich Merz here is talking about that. Yes. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that was informative, of use. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.